How are we, Reg? It is an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, mate. You are probably one of the men in my life that I've known for a long time, and you're probably one of the people, aside from my dad, that I look to in terms of inspiration. What I look to when I go like, "Who's a man? Who's a man you want to be like?" My dad and Reg. Reg, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Josh. That's humbling, and I pity your lack of judgment.
Oh, I'm doomed. Doomed as a man. But Reg, for those who don't know you, obviously you are Harry's dad. We had Harry on the second episode of the podcast, I believe. This is Harry's dad, the man behind the man. Um, Reg is an absolute legend. Reg, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm 56 years old, Harry's dad, as you've said. At 17, I joined the Australian Regular Army. So I served in the Australian Regular Army for just over 4 years. Um, then left the army and sort of did some private security stuff. Then joined Victoria Police. So I was in the Victoria Police for 8 years. My first 2 years were at St Kilda. My next 5 years were at South Melbourne, Port Melbourne, so inner city. And my last year in Victoria Police was with the Force Response Unit. So that was Riot Squad. We were the squad that did prior to the critical incident response teams being set up permanently. They were drawn out of our pool of people to deal with specific incidents. And then left the Victoria Police on the Friday, and on the Monday joined the Country Fire Authority as a professional firefighter. Um, I've been doing that ever since. So that's 20. I've been firefighter now for 24 years. My first 6 or so years, I was stationed in Corio in Geelong, so the Badlands of Geelong at that point. Then went to Point Cook, Melton, um, where I was on the heavy rescue for 15, 16 years. So that's heavy rescue is motor vehicle collisions, industrial rescues, anything where somebody gets trapped in something. They're the rescues that we went to. And I'm now stationed at Caroline Springs as a station officer. So I'm in charge of a shift at Caroline Springs. So
I
that's pretty much me.
I had known a decent amount, but I just didn't realize the extent of like how far you have been all around Victoria, all over the city, all over the country, serving people pretty much the entire time. The entire time. Um, Most people would know, especially like you said. What did you say it was? Heavy response, like
Heavy rescue.
heavy rescue. Sorry, but like
Yeah.
police work, the tactical team, heavy response, firefighting in general, all of those are super tough gigs. It takes one heck of a person to do that sort of job. And while they're
Or not
definitely,
very smart.
say again, sorry,
Or not very smart.
or not very
I
smart.
just got to, yeah.
You're
Yeah.
very humble, Reg.
Yeah. Like, well, yeah, I sort of did a little bit of, in coming on this, I did a bit of research and about, the mental health and the PTSD particularly. We sort of had a bit of a look around that because I see that a fair bit. And the top three professions for PTSD, military, police, and emergency responders. So uh, depending on which study you talk about, the order is a little bit different, but they're the top three. And I've
Going down the
been,
checklist. Bingo.
yeah, yeah.
So, if you don't mind, then, like, again, those obviously have a high correspondence with mental health issues, suicide, PTSD, all that sort of thing. Have you ever experienced these sort of battles yourself?
Yeah, I have to an extent. There was a little bit early on because I'd been to sort of been to some quite traumatic in every one of my careers, and you know lots of not lots at some of the incidents I've been to. The other people that were there have had um, issues with PTSD, and there are a number who had to leave the field because they couldn't continue on. And for a little while, I and went and spoke to some professional help because I wasn't in that field, and I thought there was something wrong with me, um, because I wasn't being affected as much as everybody else. Um, but that sort of led me on a bit of a uh, it then led me into a little bit more research, which then gave me some very good tools to handle some of the traumas that I've um, not only been involved in, but then ended up as as an officer or as a rescue commander, being in charge of and you know directing my team through. So um, yeah, and what I've found out is that just through maybe a bit of good luck with genetics, and again through being honest with myself, the way I process trauma, it just happens to be one of the ways that um, one of the ways that leads to sort of there's post traumatic stress, and then there's post traumatic growth, and in the middle there's sort of resilience.
Mm.
Um, and so it just so happened that I wasn't being quite as badly affected because just my personality um, led me to be a bit more resilient than the people I was working with. And then in trying to understand that, I sort of then developed a method of coping and sort of my own method. But um, having said that, I am extremely there's a number of incidents I've been to that have affected me badly, and um, I've had to work really hard to maintain my equilibrium, if you like. Um, yeah, I'd like there's a number of the road traffic collisions that I've been to, because they can be quite, um, quite confronting when you first get there, and then as an operator on the pointy end of rescuing somebody out of a car, you need to be very close to them, and you need to be, you know, you need to physically um, be able to, manipulate a very broken body out sometimes. So, um, yeah, I'm. If you ask my wife, I'm not okay, but in general, I'm okay.
Mm.
Um, but I have to work quite hard at being okay. If they, it's like going to the gym. I think if you want a sort of a simple analogy, in that your mental health needs to be exercised, and you need to understand where you're at. And this is, I'm from a family of that is very pragmatic and quite honest, while still being, my mum and dad were awesome and loving, but they were also honest to themselves and honest to us about things. So, when I'm struggling, I lean quite heavily on my mum and dad while mum was still around. I still do with my dad, but I'm now, Julie, my wife, is quite, is the person I lean on, and because maintaining your equilibrium is really hard to do by yourself.
Mm.
Does that does that sort of make sense?
Yeah,
Like it, um,
I can't imagine having to balance it with the sort of things that you've seen. Like I can only imagine the horror essentially, but like even on a lesser level, which not to go comparing and go tit for tat over like mental health issues and all that, but it's like if you're just trying to focus on it yourself and just, as older generations would say, man it up, like man up, toughen up, cup of concrete, that sort of thing. It's a very hard to, which I think like one of my big therapy things is just talking to Cody. Like just having up to him, we'll go on a
yep,
car ride, go on a drive, and then you just talk it all out. And then even though like we're still dudes at the end of the day. It's not going to be a deep conversation where we go, I'm Plato. I'm going to be very philosophical about it, and we're going to fix it. But it's just talking it out and hearing someone else say it, finding your own way to manage that. Um, so when you said that you went into all like researching it and all that, was it you noticing that you just didn't have a reaction like other people, or did someone bring it to your attention, which sort of realized made you go, "Huh, something isn't quite right."
Um, yeah, no, it was my realization. It was yeah, I had it was when I was in the police force. We went to and in the police force scheme of things, it wasn't a particularly. It was a welfare check where somebody hadn't seen a relative for um, a number of days, and so they rang the police and said, "I don't know, I'm I can't, I haven't, my dad's, and I can't remember the relationship particularly, but this person I know and care about um, is not returning my calls, and I haven't heard from them in a couple of days, and that's really, really unusual." So we would go and do the welfare check, make sure that they're okay, and sometimes, most of the time it's their phone wasn't on charge, or it was somebody who didn't actually know how to retrieve messages or something, so they're okay, or they would just crack the shits with that person and they were just ignoring them. But on occasion, you would go into the house and you would find them, that they were deceased. And this one we went to, and it was unfortunate. They'd collapsed in a. It was a hot day, or it was in the middle of summer, so it was hot. But they'd collapsed overnight with the heater on, um, and they'd been there for a couple of days. And when we um, went, we forced entry into the apartment, and they collapsed just behind the door. So as we sort of forced the door in and tried to actually get in, when we stepped in, the person was there. So we stepped through the person. They were in quite a state of decay, and that was traumatic at the time. And you was sort of there was a little bit of black humor going on, but my partner at the time, they couldn't come to work for a little bit after that because they were that worried them. And while it was, you know, like I wished it didn't happen, I wasn't affected like that. And I went, well, maybe there is something wrong with me. So I spoke to one of the counsellors that we get, and then sort of she was saying, well, no, there's at the moment, there's no indications that you are some sort of psychopath who has no feelings. And so that was sort of the start of it. And then I'd noticed that, my reactions were a little bit, not my reactions, sorry, my processing of the incident um, was maybe a little bit quicker than other people I'd been to. So, and now as a result of that sort of noticing that disparity between me and my partner at that point, I sort of had a look, and I now know that when I go to a traumatic incident, that I know the stages that I'll go through to process it, and if the stages don't happen where I think they should be happening, well then I'll go and seek some extra help. So I've had a couple of um, more than a couple where I'll find myself thinking about the that incident, or dreaming about it, waking up in a cold sweat with the dream. um yeah getting getting lost, or feeling uncomfortable about driving down a section of road where something has happened,
Hmm.
and they're all normal, and I need to go through that, and you know I need to be upset for the next couple of days after it, because if I'm not being upset, my subconscious and my active conscious are not actually dealing with the trauma. And that's where um, particularly with the occupations I've been in, certainly male dominant with alpha male everywhere, and lots of people just try and shut it out and they're the ones that get bitten in the ass because they haven't actually processed it, and you need to process it. So I tell all my fireys, if I go to a traumatic incident, and there's a probably a recently topical one uh, in Victoria with the machete attacks.
Mm.
So there were um, you know two young 12 and a 15-year-old killed in machete attacks in Melton not too long ago. So
Mm.
um, we were responded to that for the medical response side from the fireys, and so um, we were second on scene for the 12-year-old, and then we were first on scene for the 15-year-old. So they're quite confronting, and the two young ambos who were first on scene to the 12-year-old, they were a little bit struck. They were stunned. It was not great.
No.
Um, and so trying to help them through it, um, because they were at a stage where they couldn't quite they didn't quite know what to do because I'd never been. None of us had been to, no, not very many of us have been to anything similar. So talking them through it, and then letting them know that and I had a young fiery on my shift. I was lucky. I had a guy on my shift that day that I'd worked with for 7 or 8 years, and he was a former police officer as well. So that was quite handy to be able to lean on him. Um, but after that, we had a debrief, and I've been in contact with the fireys after that. But we had a quite a blunt debrief straight away, and I said straight out, this will play in your mind for a little bit, and you need to let it, and you need to tell somebody, and you don't have to tell them the details. And if I go to a bad incident, when I come home, I tell Julia, go, I've had a bad night, and I've had a bad night that was an EMR, so that's emergency medical response. So I've had a bad EMR, or we had a bad house fire, or we had a bad car accident, or we went to an incident where a guy was trapped in a trench. Don't go into the detail, but just that letting Julie know, or letting somebody know, that I'm actually not doing well, that I'm struggling at the moment. I'm struggling with this. Don't have to give the detail, but yeah, I've had a bad job, and so I'm going to be out of sorts for the next couple of days. I'm, you know, Julie treats me with kid gloves, and Harry and Marshall do too. I'm open with them. I'm open with them as well. I'll come home and I go, yeah, I'm struggling, and I'm struggling with this.
Mm.
So that is the sort of the first. I think that's the first step in keeping your mental health, in fine form. I've sort of waffled a bit there, mate. Sorry.
No, no, that's a awesome answer. Like really in depth. Yeah, that's a really healthy way to do it because I feel like obviously not enough people talk about what they're going through today, whether it's just a wave of depression, seeing something horrific, or just anything that's on your mind. A lot of us still just bottle it up, and you got a really
Yeah.
healthy like technique and method for dealing with it, especially keeping your family in the loop, where a lot of us might just bottle it up and then it just turns into a big flash argument at home instead because it's, oh, well, you're just being a dick. I have to walk on eggshells around you, yada yada yada, and then you're clashing when it all could have been
Yeah.
avoided. If, like you said, you don't have to say everything, but if you just give people a heads up to say, hey, look, I'm not 100% right now. I maybe I need a bit of space. Maybe I just need a bit of loving, like that sort of thing. Like really healthy,
Yep.
which I
Yep.
love to hear
Absolutely.
that.
And it's that, how often do you hear, um, you know, when somebody has, you know, done themselves in, that, they were happy and healthy. We didn't know that there was anything wrong.
Mm,
And that's because they haven't shared. And that's, I think that's one of the things our whole society, doesn't, we're not particularly good at, you know, and the white Anglo-Saxon, as you said before, just toughen up, mate. Here's some concrete because you need to toughen up.
Mm.
Um, doesn't help us. It doesn't, and certainly, I've lost. I go well. I could probably add it up, but I know that in the course of my life, I've lost maybe at least 20 people to suicide because they haven't been able to process. And while it hurts us, what gets me, and I get you know I do, and I'm tearing up now because I just think about what a deep dark place they must have been in for them to think that their only way out, the best way for them and their family and everybody they know, is
Mm.
for them not to be here. That must be a terrible place to be, I reckon. And
No,
and,
couldn't
and
agree more.
I wish that that they would have said something to somebody, to me, to anybody, to a stranger in the street, just so that they can take that first step, because
It's the
that's the
hardest
hard
bit.
part.
Yeah.
And I'm quite I try to be quite active at work. We and my work is certainly much better than it was when I first in the army. There was, at that point, so I joined in the army in the sort of mid 80s. Um, no, mental health was not even a there was nothing, like nothing. And then the police force, there was a little, and that's so police force was like early 90s. The police force then was paying lip service to the mental health of their people. You could access something, but it wasn't easy, and there wasn't a lot of education around it. But
Mm.
and then the fire service was better at it, and now they're awesome. Both the fire service and the police service have come a very long way. So we get, every sort of 6 to 12 months, the psychologists will come out, and we've got the posters up everywhere. If you're struggling, call these numbers, and you can, there's any number you can. There's fireys that you can call. And if you're not comfortable talking to a fiery, we've got in-house psychologists. If you're not comfortable talking to them, we've got out-of-house psychologists. If you want to talk to somebody else, there's a chaplain who can put you on the. So we've now got options, which is great, but there is all still a stigma around seeking help. So, if we go to um, a bad job during the night, we can put a signal 27 on it, which means, counsellors somebody will need to contact this shift because this is traumatic. Um, and unfortunately, or not unfortunately, we will get the call, and that is really good. But you know, everyone then goes, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Mm.
So I sort of encourage my guys and girls to talk to them, and just talk it through, and you might very well be fine. And there's lots of incidents that I go to that are, you know, if I was to share it outside the community, people would, look at you funny. But we we are the kings of dark humor, and things that you know nobody else sees, we get to see, and we'll make jokes about that. And we're very conscious that that stays in the truck and it doesn't go anywhere else, because it's, if it's taken out of context, it could be weird. But
Mm.
having said that, and that's a good way. That is a good way. That sharing it, that bonding, that shared experience. If you're in a traumatic incident with other people and you don't talk about it, it festers. But if you talk about it with those people, because they've been through the same thing and they understand exactly what you've been through, so then that's healthy and good, and we need to engage in that. So I encourage my shift to engage in that. But when the psychologists and that come around, they go, "Does anyone want to have a one-on-one chat?" I'm always the first to put my hand up, and I'll
Leading by
go,
example there as well.
"Well, yeah, yeah. I don't. I want these. you know, 24 years in the job. I've got, more years behind me than I have ahead of me. Um, but I want the guys that are just starting in the job to be able to feel comfortable
Mm,
talking to, you know, the the peers or the psychologists or anyone about this stuff, because that's how they're going to be able to do 30 years in the job and not have to, after 5 or 10 years, go, yep, you know what, I love the job, but I just can't turn up to work anymore. Like, I had a guy that I knew, had worked with for a while, and he was on his way to work, um, and then just drove past because he went, I just couldn't turn in. Like, I couldn't turn up to work. I just couldn't go to the station that day. And he's working, day work, so he's not an operational fire anymore because he just can't face it. And that's because he hadn't processed these
mm,
traumas. And we talk about, in the fire service, we've got a whole there's a uh, there's a whole thing, but we call it the shit bucket. So everyone's got a shit bucket. So and the shit bucket holds all your stress, and so that's stress from home, it's stress from work, it's stress from some idiot on the road who cuts you off. So all of that stress, anything that happens, and some of it is minor stress, some of it is, you get a flat tire on the way to an appointment. That can add as much stress as, say, going to a house fire where there's somebody reported missing, and so for that time, that's really stressful.
mm.
So all of those stresses build into your shit bucket, and if you don't empty the shit bucket when it overflows, that's when you are in trouble.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of things to help you empty some of that stuff out of your bucket, because it continues to fill. And unless you take some control and actively empty the bucket, it will eventually overflow. And some people have got a really big bucket, some people have got a small bucket. It doesn't actually matter about the size, it just matters about when it overflows.
Mm,
So, things, and it's things like seeking counselling when you're in trouble, talking to your mates or your family, or some random person on the street, or a tree, or take your dog for a walk, or going to the gym, or sitting down and staring out the window, listening to music, whatever you need to do to let your mind and your body process the trauma. That's what empties your shit bucket. And I think if that education was better out there, that you need to actively look after yourself, not just physically but mentally, to be the best version of you want to be, then that education, I think, would go a long way to helping everybody get through this, whatever life is.
mm. I think it like the when you said that whenever they come around with a psychiatrist, you're always the first to, or the psychologist, you're always first to put your hands up. I don't think, like, I'm sure you understand it, but that is such a powerful thing to do. Like, I try and do that on my end with streaming. Obviously, I'm not as old or as bold as you, but like when it comes to that sort of thing, like I've got a lot of younger guys. Like they're still in the teenage years. They're still in school. They've either just left school, starting uni, and it's like if they can see someone older than them who's gotten through it, and then someone who's still willing to put their hand up and speak about it, it does give them that push. Like I've had a lot of guys where it's like, oh, I think to myself, oh, I haven't done much. They go, Josh, what you doing's great. I'm like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just talking. But they're going like, yeah, but I saw you do it, and now I'm able to do it. And then they talk to me, and then you'd probably have the same thing with the younger guys, where it's like, oh shit, Reg has been on the job as long as I've been alive, and he's still gone. He's like first to put his hand up. I'm gonna do that as well. Like that is really admirable. Like that's awesome to see.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, I don't think that I'm doing anything special. I'm just doing what I think is right, um,
Mm,
and what works. But yeah, it's the I don't know. I don't like I consider myself, you know, masculine and manly and all of that sort of stuff. But I also don't think that being vulnerable lessens any of that.
No, I couldn't agree
And
more.
I don't understand. And I've had discussions with people who think that you shouldn't be telling everybody your problems and you shouldn't be doing any of that. And I don't tell everybody my problems.
Mm,
I've got a select few of people who I rely on and rely heavily on, and I hope that they can rely on me.
mm,
It is a two-way street. Um, but none of that being vulnerable, and I will cry and have done and will cry again
mm.
without an absolute doubt. And if I don't do that, that's when I know I'm in trouble
Yep.
because it means I'm not processing. And I've got, as I say, no embarrassment in saying that I have cried, and some of this stuff is, you know, have woken up in cold sweats for months because of things I've, dreaming about things that I've been to. But I also know that if I don't do that, I will, could quite easily end up, you know, leaning on some of the less healthy, ways of coping, whether it be alcohol or whether it be um, isolation or whether it be getting angry with every single person in my life. You know,
Mm,
if I don't let myself feel the feelings that I can't help feeling, well then, yeah, then the other consequences are bad. So I'm going to go through it, and I'm quite happy to tell everyone, anyone and everyone that I've struggled
mm,
at different points, but I'm also working to try and make sure that I don't have to struggle any more than I need to, because we are going to struggle. Your shit bucket is going to get, if it doesn't overflow, it's going to get really really full,
mm,
and you need to, you know hopefully develop some strategies and or seek some help in getting that empty.
mm. When it comes to being a man, and the way I sort of took it from you there, and the way I sort of think about it is more like, obviously it's not weak to speak, but like if you want to look at it and still think of it in a masculine way, I sort of think of this like stoicism mindset that there's a time and a place for it. Like if you're on the job, or if you're still looking after people, or you've got something to do, now's not the time to deal with
Yep.
it. But once you get home, once you get to a point, you have to let yourself decompress. Like if I have a bad day at work or something, I'm not gonna go take it out on all my colleagues. Like, yeah, I'm gonna be pissed off. I might have a bit of shit about it, but shit bucket getting filled a little bit. But once you get home, if I get on the video game, I'm talking to the boys about it. I'm at least doing something about it because there's a time and a place. If it gets to a point where it's breaking down in tears, which reality check, men cry, and it's okay to cry, but if it gets to that point of cry, it's like I'm not going to cry in the middle of the shopping center. I'm not going to cry while I'm halfway through a job that I've got to do that's super important. I'm going to let myself feel it when it's appropriate and when I'm able to look after myself in that moment as well. Which isn't to say I'm not going to feel it, period. I'm just going to make sure I do it when I'm able to give it the full attention it deserves. That's the way I look at it
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And in my line of work, if I can't I can't deal with it at the time. I physically can't because there's so much other stuff I need to be doing and I need to be focused on. But when we get back to the station and we've got time,
Mm.
and I've kept us offline um, for you know a bit longer than it takes to make the truck back up and ready to be operational
When
because
you
we've all
say,
needed to
sorry
go
to
and have a
interrupt,
shower.
when you say like offline, you mean like, oh, we can't go on a
Okay,
call right now?
yeah, not responding. Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
yeah.
cool.
So for us, yeah, we go and do a job, and then if we haven't got our PPE is dirty or all our equipment's been used and we need to restock,
Mm.
we're offline. So we're not
Yeah.
responding. And there have been times where I've kept us offline um, because we need to sit down and have a cuppa together and actually talk it out because it's we need to get the process you know started, and that's the appropriate time to do it. You know, we're you know as a in the fire service, we're a pretty tight knit unit. Where
Mm.
my station, my shift, there's four of us on it, so we, we're pretty good at identifying. We know each other pretty well, and when we're on shift, we spend more time with each other than we do with our families. So it is also, that's handy, because sometimes you I may not have quite got to the point where I've registered that I'm struggling, and somebody else has noticed it and gone, "How are you going? How are you tracking?" And I stop and I go, "Yeah, actually, you know what? You're right. I'm not going."
Mm.
And unfortunately, this is another one of those things that our society sort of, um, well, it doesn't reinforce, but happens, is that if somebody asks you if you're going okay, your automatic response is to go, "Yes, I'm okay," and put the
Yeah,
shields up
right.
and get really defensive
Yep.
without looking at, you know, this person actually cares about you, and they want to make sure you're okay. So if they've said something, maybe I need to stop and actually have a look and go, and I do it. You automatically go, "Yeah," and then you might have to go, "Actually, let me give me 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and I'll have a chat." And you sit down and you look inside and you go, "Am I okay?
Mm.
Yeah, I am. Okay." And then you can go on, but you've got to stop and look, because there's been a number of times where I've stopped and I've looked and I've gone, "Actually, you know what? I'm not okay." And so, thank you. Like, I thank them, because you know that's got me started, and I don't want to be, I don't want to turn into somebody that is, compartmentalizes and then gets to the point where there's nothing else to be done but something drastic. And so that side of it, and that, knowing that somebody else cares for you, I think goes a long way too.
Mm.
Like, that somebody he genuinely cares that you're doing okay. And that's the, that "Are you okay" day. I think that is brilliant. I send heaps of messages out on that. And you see, there's a number of companies now that have got, I think, what is it? There's one company, Trademark, I think, do a the high vis work shirt
Oh,
that has
yeah,
got,
yeah.
got a mental health. It's okay to be not okay.
Mm. For those who
It's something different, but I can't remember what it is.
yeah, for
And
those who don't
they
know, it's think like your workwear, but it's designed to be bright, colorful, like what you would imagine when people say an LSD trip. Not that I've done LSD, but like
yes,
when people describe it, and the whole point of it is to bring attention to it, similar to the mustache from November. So the whole point is to bring it to the attention to say we should be asking each other how we're doing. And I'm really
yeah,
glad that you brought up the whole thing that we always just go, I'm right. Because I had a experience like that recently where I came to work. It was a Monday. I was in a bit of a rut with something going on in my personal life, and like it was showing. I was short with everybody, which isn't fair on everybody else. And one of my coworkers, who I've known like a month or two at this point, David, really nice guy, and he goes, "Josh, you're right, mate." I go, "Yeah, yeah, I'm right." And then I'm thinking to myself, I know I'm not right. And I'm sitting here growing a mustache trying to go, yeah, men's mental health is important. And I've just put this big fucking wall up. And then thankfully, he comes back later when we've just came back in from the lunch break. It's only me and him in the bay. And he goes, "Josh, are you sure you're right, bro?" And I just felt like this like clump in my throat. And I'm like, he goes, "Is it work? Like, are we giving you too much work to do? Because like I work under him. He's like the plasma guy. He gives me all the samples. I got to do all the work, or I got to do all the
yeah,
grunt work." He's like, "Is it the work? Like, do I need to cut?" I'm like, "No, no, no. It's not that. It's something outside of work." And he goes, "You want to talk about it?" I'm like, and I'm thinking. I sat there for a minute. He's just standing there. He's being gentle about it. And I go, "You know what? Like, this is what I'm championing being open about talking about mental health." And I told him about it, and he gave some good advice because I was stressing about the future. And he goes, don't don't control life, dance with it. And then I wasn't stressing about it anymore. But it was again that whole thing that initially, if I just if he just left it at that first bit where I go, yeah, I'm right, even though I'm clearly not right, and I haven't opened up. He gave me another chance, which I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, if someone says genuinely to you, like if you're passing someone in the street, and they go, "You're right, mate," you're not gonna just tell them everything. But if someone's genuinely caring for you, then like be open to it. It is
Yeah.
gonna be okay. They wouldn't ask if they didn't care.
No, exactly right. And it's, you don't have to tell them everything. You can
Mm,
just go, yeah, no, I am struggling. I'm struggling because of this, but thank you. Yeah, yeah. And that sometimes, more often than not, is enough to get you on the right track again. So that's excellent.
I
But
agree.
yeah, that, and you see the shirts around that, to the person behind me. I just want to let you know that you are, loved or welcome or enough, and you go,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, there needs to be more of that because
That's my riding jumper. Every time I take my leathers off, I've got it says "You are enough" on the front, and dear person
yep,
behind me, the
yep,
person in front of you wants to know that you're loved. And I've had
yep,
so many people come up to me about that. We went on a mental health awareness ride, and the leader dude, he comes over like big like macho bearded guy. Like he looks like he's gonna beat you up, but he just gives us a
yep,
me and Cody were both wearing him. He just gives us a big hug. He's like, "What you boys are doing is really important." He's tearing up.
yep,
And then I'm tearing up
yeah,
because I got this big burly man in front of me, like he's Santa Claus, and he's just tearing up. I'm like,
yeah,
shit, bro. Like he said, I've lost too
yep,
many friends, and I'm like, I don't want to lose any friends. And then I don't know. It was just something beautiful. It was really beautiful to
yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah. No, that is awesome. Oh, yeah. I mean, you don't. I hope you never lose any friends because I've lost too many, and
Mm,
it's just, yeah, and the fact that you're doing this, and we have things like Movember and all those, the Are You Okay, and those things is a massive step forward, and we just, hopefully we can keep the ball rolling so that it is, there's far less of a stigma around putting your hand up and going, you know what, I'm actually not okay.
mm. Because at the end of the day, like if anybody was to judge you for it, which no one in this day and age should, and if they are, they're probably a bit on the silly side. But everybody wants to help, and
Yeah,
I like the analogy you can. I've said it like 1,000 times over the course of these podcast episodes, but you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force him to drink. All these
yeah,
people want to help lead you to that water. You just have to take that first step back. And don't get me wrong, it is such a tough step to take, but by
oh,
God, is it worth it?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And
for you
there's
to have another day on this earth is worth it way more than a world without you guys in it.
100%. And look, the hardest part, I think, about being, in control of your own mental health is actually being honest to yourself. And this is that everyone's got a picture of themselves, and the picture of themselves is the picture that they want to present to everyone else, or the probably more accurately, the picture that they want other people to see.
Mm,
So the person that I want the world to see is who I see inside. Trying to get through to that idiot that you need to be honest with your feelings,
mm,
is one of the hardest, I think, one of the hardest steps, and the that is hard work to be honest to yourself, because the lies you tell yourself are the ones that are the deepest rooted.
mm,
And you know for somebody in, of my age and in my profession, you know I'm 10 foot tall, bulletproof, and I'm the person that people look to have all the answers, and I don't. I I'd like to. And again, that's my picture. My picture is the guy that people can depend on. The guy that people depend on needs to be honest with himself.
mm.
And so when I'm
Because,
struggling and when I haven't got the answers, I have to go, I actually don't have the answers. I don't have the answers to whatever problem this is. I need some more help. And
mm,
that's that seeking help, or that first tiny little teaspoon of shit out of your shit bucket. can lead to, can lead to it emptying, and that's where you've got to be, you know, actively honest with yourself.
I agree. I like the way you said it, even if it's just a teaspoon out of the shit bucket. Um, when that shit bucket does get full and it starts overflowing, what are you finding the hardest in those times?
Yeah, yeah, and that's the that's the question. For me personally, I shut down, and I shut down everything, not just shut down talking to people. I shut down, you know, going for a ride. I shut down playing the Xbox. I shut down reading my book. I shut down, you know, just doing stuff. I just sit and do nothing and feel nothing and wallow.
Mm,
And that making myself get up out of the couch or out of bed or out of, you know, wherever I am, and doing something. Uh, and for me, generally, it's active. So even if it's going for a walk around the block or walking to the shops to get a Coke or a coffee or an ice cream,
mm,
you know, that that is the hard bit because I'm an introvert, um, as my sort of core personality, and so when my bucket gets close to being full, I really roll inside, and I'm an armadillo with the armor on the outside
mm.
and soft squishy me on the inside, and I do not want to move from that safe place, and it's not a safe place.
No,
But at that time, I can't see that it's not. If that makes Does that make sense? I'm not
no,
sure if
that
that does.
that makes 100% sense. It's like
So yeah,
which
when I'm in that, I want to stay there, and it's not safe and it's not healthy, but that's where I want to stay. So trying to get out of that's the hardest part for me.
and that's such a it's so isolating when you're there, but when you hear about it, you just know it's such a universal experience. Like if somebody says, "Oh, I shut down, I'm the armadillo," it's like I get that. I when
Yeah,
I was going through that sort of stuff in high school, it was very much, "Oh, no one understands. I'm better off alone right now." Like I'm this. I'm bad. I'm yucky. I'm all that, and then you're just not doing yourself any favors. And again, it is the hardest part to come out of that shell.
yeah,
And
and that's yeah.
well, I was gonna say,
I
and
was going to say, yeah, go.
I suppose the question, and I'll let you answer and put in what you were about to say before you answer this. But I suppose the next question to that is, how do you find the best way to get out of, like, to come back out after putting yourself in that isolation?
Yeah, yeah, coming to that realization.
Mm,
Yeah, it's for me. Um, it's seeking the company of people that sort of understand. So I've got a couple of guys, that I used to work with. One guy that I was in the army with, and a couple of guys that was coppers with that actually I don't talk to unless there's I need to just, you know relate to somebody who has had similar experiences, but I don't necessarily relate the experience. I just touch base, go, g'day, mate, and then they'll come back with, how you going, and just sort of start that. And I've got a very good mate who, um, we will catch up and have coffee and not necessarily say anything. We're just in each other's company
mm,
because that's what I need to be my first step is, contact with another person. And my wife Julie is that person most of the time, but sometimes it's beyond that. Sometimes it needs to be somebody different.
mm,
And not very often, but you know, sometimes it does. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the worst case I go to this person. It's just some things are, you know, some things are too close to Julie, like particularly if we've gone to a medical response with somebody that reminds me of Julie or reminds me of the kids,
Mm.
that Julie's not the person I need to help me get out of that,
No.
because it puts me back in.
Mm.
So I need to go elsewhere, and sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes I have to go somewhere else. Sometimes it's the Xbox. Sometimes it's getting on the Xbox, going, playing an old school game, playing a Call of Duty 3 or one of those that is like, again, like riding a bike. I can do it without actively thinking about it, but it's just the physical act of doing something
Mm.
that
Other than
starts that
just
ball
sitting
rolling,
in that
rather
wallowing
than
in
just,
the pain
yeah,
and the feel or the lack
yep,
thereof of
yep.
feeling.
And it's the phrase I use is not particularly nice, but it's, I'm scrabbling in a puddle of my own urine. Is
Mm.
That's where I'm at. That's my lowest point. Is I am just on the ground, not even able to get up to go to the toilet. So that's the yeah. If I'm scrabbling on the ground in a puddle of my own urine, well then I need to. Luckily, there's a hook somewhere in my brain that recognizes that's the time to I need to act. And
Mm.
I think that has been set now by the fact that I've actively worked at my mental health, and keeping that active, and so that is what keeps that's safety net, if you like. Is I get to that point and then it goes, yeah, no, now that's enough now.
Mm.
And yeah, so sometimes it's going for a run, and I hate running. The army really cured me of running, but sometimes the physical act of putting your shoes on, lacing them up, getting out the door, and putting one foot on after the other,
Mm.
and not thinking about anything, just physically doing something, is what leads you out. And that's that first act, which whatever it is, whether it be, for me, whether it be coffee with a mate, whether it be Xbox or computer games, or going for a run. It's that first step is really really hard, and it may not be the run I start maybe to the end of the street and back, because I've just gone, yeah, no, that's it, I'm now spent. But it's getting out of the house and doing it
Yeah.
that is the first step. And then
Mm.
maybe the next day I'll make it to the second corner, and then the third corner, and then all of a sudden I'm back to my normal distances.
Mm.
So that there's it is that, yeah. And again, it goes back to being honest with yourself that I'm at a low point and I need to do something about it.
I feel like a lot of us can normally at least bring ourselves to the solitary things like going for a run, going to the gym, playing
Yep.
video games, like doing something that maybe
Yep.
takes your mind off it. Like I know video games are a massive escape for me, but obviously it's not a permanent fix. And for the large majority of it, talking about it obviously isn't going to nothing's going to permanently fix damage that's done. But how obviously you've got a solid support network now, but how initially did you manage to sort of set up these support networks for yourself?
Um. Yeah. It sort of, and initially it sort of happened organically. Um. My dad being, uh, he, you know, 15 years as a patrol officer through New Guinea, and then 20 plus years in the Air Force. Um, he, he was quite a good sounding board without me actually realizing he was a sounding board. And I didn't talk to him all the time, but he's been around the block a couple of times and seen some things. So from a relatively young age, I had at least, and dad, again, one of these guys that, I think my dad was probably born a generation too early. I think he would have absolutely thrived as a young man growing up now, where everything's enlightened. When he was born in the 40s, so um, he was very stoic, but I don't think he wanted to be. but
Mm.
he was expected to be. But so with us, he was quite open. And when I was 10, Dad had brain surgery for a brain tumor, and then every couple of years after that, he had more surgeries. So he was, um, I think that helped us because he was quite scared that he was going to die before he saw us grow up.
Mm.
And so as a result, you know, he was probably a little bit more open and honest about his fears than everybody else in his generation because he was, in 79, he was told that he wouldn't last another 10, and he's still with us. So there's, at least I know I come from healthy stock. Um, but I think the fact that he was scared that he was not going to see his sons grow up, that he spoke, and then that, you know, I had that as a role model that it was okay that you could speak.
Mm.
So that I think helped, and then through through the army and the police force, I was always part of small teams, and small teams you get to know far too much about the people that you're with.
Yeah.
Um, but the upside of that is when they're not going okay,
Mm.
and so as a result, there was always you know somebody there, and when I and to be and again I've got to be honest, through the I through certainly my army and my the private soldiering bit after that, I was very insular, and I was very um, compartmentalized, and so I wasn't it wasn't healthy. I didn't deal with that particularly well.
Mm.
Um, there was a um, probably my catalyst or my tipping point personally was noticing that I wasn't as affected as some of the other people, and then um, newly married, and trying to start a family, and as a copper was then exposed to HIV positive blood, and so that all got put on hold for a year. So trying to raise a family, no family, no contact, all of that sort of stuff. Um, that was really really tough mentally, and I think that was where that was the time that I went, yeah, I probably need some help here, and that's where you know Julie and my relationship was really solidified, and she became my number one person to go to. Um, yeah, and so part of it was luck, part of it was stubbornness, and part of it was curiosity. Is in I need to. I'm the sort of person that needs to know how things work, which is again why I became a copper, and then when I'm a fire, now that I'm a fire, I became a fire investigator because I needed to know. So part of my my nature is trying to figure stuff out,
Mm.
and I was this was I don't think there's probably any any greater puzzle than mental health, and so trying to
Mm.
figure that out is sort of where I'm at, and I'm under no illusion that I've got a handle on it. I know that I need to keep working, and you know I will I'm reading all the time, trying to be better at looking after myself. And now that now that I'm in charge of a shift, I'm trying to be better at looking after. I want to make sure the guys that I'm responsible for come out of whatever we do better than they went in, and better than I was or will ever be. And that will then that if when I finally leave the fire service, I can leave fireys that are far more resilient and mentally healthy than I have ever been. Well, then I consider that a win. That if there was, I guess if you talk about leaving a legacy, that's what I'd like to leave. Is that
Mm. I think
people
you're already leaving that legacy, mate. Like there's always more work to be done. I always say that like you will fight it again. Like whatever you're going through, they will like if you're talking depression, anxiety, it'll come and go in waves. It's unfortunately it's a permanent war, but that doesn't mean that like each battle is unwinnable. It doesn't mean like while it might be an eternal enemy that you've got, it doesn't mean that you're gonna lose every time you fight it. Um,
No.
so I I liked how you said that because your dad was open, you ended up finding yourself being a bit open, ended up closing off a bit more at the start of your time in the workforce. To make a long story shorter, I find it interesting how um, those positive early role models do help. Like again, dad, I love him. I want to grow up and be a good man like him, but I've always known that one of the things that me and dad suck at is actually talking about our emotions. And it's good that he's getting better at now. He's sort of following in my footsteps, funnily enough, about opening up. And then Vic, his coworker who I talked to a couple of episodes ago, it's like he's got
Yeah.
those people and then they're working together and then they're pushing forward the mental health. But it's interesting because when I look at you, I always know that it's okay to talk about mental health. And now I do the same with dad, but like with you, like your family, in my opinion, well, we've grown up next to it. You've watched me grow up. I've been over at your house plenty of times. We've gone on adventures and stuff like that. And like me and dad, we don't say I love you enough. But like you're always saying I love you to your family and you're always checking in on everybody and it's inspirational. And yeah, it's I my main point with it is just like how being a role model for other people, which I think you've been doing for a long time, I'm trying to do. I think we're all trying to be a good role model and leave that positive legacy, as you said. And I know you're very humble, Reg, but I don't think you give yourself enough credit, man. Like, you're doing a really good job, like, an awesome job with what you're doing, looking out for people, making sure that you're leaving people who also look after themselves, which I think it's really important to recognize that.
Well, oh, thank you for saying it. I'm, you know, I don't think I'm doing anything that shouldn't be done. Um, it's, yeah, I just want to make sure everyone's okay.
Mm,
Like that's the like it, I think yeah, I, yeah. I don't think I, I I don't like seeing people in pain,
mm,
and I don't think there's like I've seen people in physical pain, lots of physical pain, but the that mental pain has got is far worse, I think, and the ramifications and the ongoing ripple effects to not only their physical health but their family and their friends and then everybody else, you know, in that sort of their sphere is yeah. I just want to hope that we can yeah make people looking after their own mental health and helping people along that journey is if that became standard that would be that would be the best thing
mm.
that
I
we
couldn't
want to
agree
just
more.
make
It,
that
it's
everybody can go I need help and there's help there for them.
mm,
That's yeah,
it's always
that's
like
it.
this bittersweet feeling because it's like it always sucks that it's always like a tragedy or always just shit that mean it's the it's bitter because it's shit that happens and then it's sweet that we end up trying to progress and do better because of it. And obviously it's a
Yep.
shame that these things happen in the first place, but I suppose the silver lining to it all is that there are people who well, I feel like as a society in general, we're moving more towards it. There's always more work to be done, but it's the silver
Oh,
lining that
but
we are moving in a positive direction with looking
we are
after our
getting
mental
better.
health.
We are getting better at helping, and we're getting better at identifying. And there's and we're getting better at working through new and different ways of helping people. And there's no one answer. There's just isn't one answer.
Mm,
And for some people, medication is the absolute answer and good. And for some people, it is absolutely not the answer, and that's all
mm,
right too, because there is something else that is the answer. And if we can identify what it is that you need, well, then we can give you that, and that's that's right. That makes the world right then. So
mm. Because at the
yeah,
end of the
there's
day, we want you to be here, like regardless of
sure,
how unloved you feel or how little you think you mean. You mean something to someone, and the world is
absolutely
100% a better place with you in it.
for sure.
Um,
And
to end off the podcast, Reg, for our listeners at home, are there any parting words that you'd like to leave them with?
um, look, I wish I had prepared a very meaningful and deep and thoughtful
No,
answer.
it's
I
coming
think
straight from the heart.
yeah, and look, I think the thing that has helped me identify when I'm struggling is just being honest and being honest with about has what has caused your issue, trauma, stress, however you want to term it, is that if you're not honest with yourself, and your feelings are your own feelings, so you can't help how you feel again about or in a particular situation.
Mm,
But if you're honest with yourself, you've got a starting point, and until you've got your starting point, your journey out is really really hard because you don't know where you've got to go from. Um, and you know, and if you can't identify it yourself, put your hand up and you go, I am struggling, and I actually don't know why, but I
mm-hmm.
am struggling, and I need some help, because without that, you become the armadillo and you disappear down your own hole. That sounds far dirtier than I intended it, but you know what I mean. It's spiraling down. Once
Beautiful
you start
words.
the spiral, once you start your spiral, it's very hard to stop. So that's where you put your hands out and go, yeah, I'm 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 not doing okay, and I don't know why. And that's when that's where you that's your first teaspoon out of your bucket of shit. That's the being honest, and being honest to say that you're struggling, and I need help, even if you don't know why you need help. You just
Mm.
identify and be honest with yourself that that's it, because there's too many people that yeah deny it to themselves. I don't know whether that's eloquent or not, but that's the gist of it, is that yeah if you can't get yourself out of it, put your hand up and say I need help. That's the key, I think. I
No,
don't know
that's
that there's any particular key, but that's certainly
it's a
a
start.
really strong starting point. Yeah.
No, that was beautiful, Reg. Again, massive thank you. It's been an honor having you on the podcast, man. Again, I know you're humble, and I know for the most part, the mental health work that you're doing and the mental health work most of us are doing, yes, it's just doing what should be done, but there's got to be someone who starts it, and you're doing a lot of good work, man. I appreciate you so much. I love you, man. You're doing awesome work.
All right, mate.
Eh,
I love you too. You guys are awesome.
Oh, I gotta bring a tear to my
And,
eye.
and if if anyone wants to chat, I'm always open. If you want to chat, if Cody wants to chat, if your dad wants to chat, if somebody who sees this podcast wants to chat, I'm open to chat, because I'd much rather you talk to me than somebody talking about you at a funeral.
I say that all the
And
time. I'd
yeah,
I'd much rather you cry on my shoulder than I cry at your funeral.
yeah,
Truer words couldn't be said,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
Thank you
No,
again, Reg.
I'm happy.
Absolute pleasure.
Always happy to chat, and I will always be honest.
Always. Thank you so much, Reg, man. You have a good night.
No worries, mate. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
See ya.